Alright, today then, we're going to talk about powers of I. Shh. This will be a short experiment. We're going to talk about powers of I, and we're going to talk about solving equations using imaginary numbers. Yesterday, I think, was I wouldn't say the hardest day of the unit. I would say it's probably the longest day because the problems take so much time. They're kind of tedious. Today is normally where kids get tripped up a lot. With these powers of I, it's usually a struggle to kind of understand the concept. So please make sure you're paying attention. Please make sure you're asking questions about it. Alright? Cool? Alright, first and foremost, we're going to talk about what I through I to the 8th all equal. If I have a problem and I have 8i, do I ever change I? No, I leave it as 8i, right? So I is going to equal I. It's pretty simple. Right? We don't change it when we have a problem, so we're just going to leave it as I. Well, what does I squared equal?
-1.
-1. If you can't answer that question, what does I squared equal? If you can't answer that yet, we're in a lot of trouble. Alright? You need to know that. I cubed. What does that equal?
1.
Not 1. Not -2.
-1.
I appreciate you guys actually guessing though.
-1.
Not -1.
-3. Some number.
Alright.
Is it a number?
Not technically numbered.
I.
Okay.
I squared.
Let's look at it. So, I cubed. Do we all agree that that's the same as I squared times I? Will you guys agree with me on that?
Yeah.
So remember when I multiply things that have exponents, I add their exponents?
Yeah.
Okay, so we all agree that that's true. I squared times I is the same as I cubed.
It's gonna be I times I times I.
What is, what's I squared equal?
-1.
-1. So if I replace it with -1,
It's gonna be -1 times a
what's -1 times I?
-1.
-1i or just -I? I cubed equals -I. Now, do you need to memorize that?
Yeah.
No.
No.
You don't need to memorize these. The only one you need to know is I squared equals -1, alright? We're just going to go through, we're going to see what they all equal because they actually form a pattern. Alright? So now same thing for I to the 4th. Could we say that's the same as I squared times I squared?
Oh,
Does
1.
that make sense?
It's gonna be 1. Right?
I squared is -1, I squared is -1. What's -1 times -1? 1. What's going to happen, guys, is if I go to I to the 5th,
So in the odds, it's
Why's your flash so
long and on the even.
I don't know. It's so weird. That's the same as I to the 4th times I, right? Right? I to the 4th times I to the 1st, I to the 5th. Do we agree with that? What was I to the 4th equal to? 1. So 1 times I is just I, or 1i. Hey, what do you think that means I to the 6th is going to be?
-1.
-1. What do you think I to the 7th is going to be? -I. And 1. Right? So you notice every 4 it restarts. It's almost like a little loop. It goes I, -1, I, 1. I, -1, I, 1. It keeps going in a circle. Alright? That is going to be one way you can go about solving certain problems using powers of I. Is by using what we call the I circle. You will not be given that on a test. If you want to use it, you need to remember it. It is I, -1, I, 1. Every time I multiply by I move 1 over. Which means if I want to solve I to the 15th, what I would do is I would start with I. Start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I to the 15th would equal -I. Now, for a number like 15, that's not so bad, right? Going around, hitting 15 of them, that's not bad. But like, what if we give you on the test something like I to the 200 and something?
Then you go around the 200.
You have to go 200 sometimes around, which would be kind of tedious and take forever, right?
Yeah.
So, can you use the I wheel? Yeah, 100%. You can use that if you want, but you need to remember it. It's not given to you. There's another way. I use the I squared method which I to the power of 2, which I'll show you right now. I think it's a little quicker and easier, but I mean, just, it's all up to you, depending on how you feel, right? So I use I squared because we know what I squared equals, right? It's negative 1. So what I do, if I have I to the 15th, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take I squared, and I'm going to think to myself, how many times does 2 go into 15? 2 times what will give me, it goes in 7 times, right? 2 go into 15 7 times. Does that get me to 15 though?
No.
No, that only gets me to 14. So to get to 15, I would multiply by 1 more I. Right? This is 14 times I would give me I to the 15. Does that make sense where that comes from? We all understand that? Okay? I squared equals what? Negative 1. So I'm going to make that negative 1 to the 7th times I. Well, what's negative 1 to the 7th power? Put it in your calculator if you don't know. Make sure if you're putting it in your calculator, use parentheses as well. Put it, yeah, go ahead, do it. Do it right now. Oh, wait. Negative 1. Negative 1 to the 7th power is going to be negative 1. Times I is negative I. Hey, look, I end up at the same spot. Right? You should. Either way you do it, you should get the same thing. If you use the wheel, we end up at negative I. If we did I to the power of 2, we end up at negative I. Right? Whichever way you want to do it. Or if you find some way, like you're looking online because you don't know what you're doing, and you find a way you like it on there. I really don't care. Right? Whatever way makes you comfortable. I prefer it this way, and this is the way I'm going to do it most often. But if you want to use the wheel, you can. Alright? Let's try another one. I to the 22nd. If I take I squared, how many times does 2 go into 22? 11. 2 times 11 gets me 22. I don't need to multiply by another I. I'm already at 22. Right? So I squared is negative 1. Negative 1 to the 11th power is going to be negative 1. If I use the wheel, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And I end up at negative 1. Same spot, right? You always start on top with the wheel, and that counts as your 1. And keep going. Alright, does that make sense? Do we have any questions on this? So far? No? Okay. Alright. Well, could we use those ideas to simplify 3i to the 8th minus 4i to the 5th plus 7i squared? How can we use what we just did to simplify that? Nothing? No clue? 20 seconds. Talk to people at your table. Figure something out. Think of something. Converse. I want to be able to hear all your voices. You don't need to yell, but talk to each other. Now, we need to be careful by just saying that. Because we don't begin with them times, right? So what I would say is still need a line with each number. In this case, we're already and then like on a test, it's like I to the 26. You just take it out and you're fine. Alright, 20 seconds is up. Who's got an idea? Anyone? No one? I heard you guys talking.
I got it.
Aiden, what do you got?
This might be wrong, but are you just gonna do the methods for every I to see if you can break it down to like get rid of the I?
Perfect.
Kind of, yeah.
We're gonna separate. We're gonna look at I to the 8th. Figure out what it equals.
I.
Well, I squared, how many times does 2 go into 8? 4. So I get negative 1 to the 4th, which is 1. Positive 1. Hey guys, you want to know a little trick about figuring out negative 1 to a certain power? Negative 1 to any odd power is always going to be negative 1. Negative 1 to any even power will always be positive 1. Right? So, when I go to rewrite this now, instead of writing I to the 8th, I'm going to write 1. So 3 times 1. Then I'm going to take, what is going to be I to the 5th? Well, 2 goes into 5 2 times. That only gets me to 4 though, so I'm going to multiply by 1 more I. So I get negative 1 squared times I, which negative 1 squared is 1, times I is I. So instead of writing I to the 5th, I'm not going to write just I. So minus 4 times I. And guys, what does I squared equal?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So then plus 7 times negative 1. Figure out which each of the individual i's equal and plug them in. We get 3 minus 4i minus 7. Which in this case we can just add our like terms. Combine our like terms. 3 minus 7, negative 4 minus 4i. That's my final answer. Was that so bad? No. Right? Now, I might put a star next to that one or circle. I'd probably make sure I know how to do a problem like that. Now, I would also make sure I know how to do a problem like that with bigger numbers than 8 and 5 and 2. I make sure I know how to do the powers of I with it. But I'll just make sure I know how to do that. Okay. Any questions? I think we have about 4 to do and we're done. Solving. We've all solved equations before, right? Yes, I hope so. If you're in Algebra 2, I hope you solved equations already. Okay? If I have x squared plus 10 equals 6, how do I go about solving that? Subtract 10. X squared equals negative 4. Good. Then what would I do? How do I solve for x? I don't want x squared. I want x. Square root it. Square root both sides. I get x equals, what's the square root of negative 4? Error. You have an error because you put it in your calculator. Guys, remember we can't put these in our calculator. We did this on day 1. If I go off to the side here, if I want to find the square root of negative 4, remember I separate that into 4 times negative 1. What does negative 1 equal? I squared. So it becomes square root of 4 times I squared. Square root of 4 is? Square root of I squared is? I. Now, when we are solving, that's our key word here. When we are solving, we should always get 2 answers. Because not only is it positive 2i, it's also negative 2i. Right? If we're just simplifying expressions, like if I say, what is the square root of negative 4? That's just 2i when it's simplified. But if I say we need to solve it, then we could have either answer, either positive 2i or negative 2i. So you need to have 2 answers when we are solving. If on the test you only have 1 answer, it's wrong. It's wrong. Right? 2 answers when we are solving. Let's try another one. 2x squared plus 45 equals negative 5. Well, first step should be what, Sim? What do you think? This problem?
Subtract by 45.
Subtract by 45. Perfect. 2x squared equals negative 50. Bryce, what do you think I should do next?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. X squared equals negative 25. Brian, what should I do to solve for x? Square root it. Perfect. Square root both sides. X equals. Now remember, same thing. 5 square root of negative 25. I can break that down into 25 times negative 1, which negative 1 is the same as I squared. Square root of 25 is going to be 5. Square root of I squared is going to be I. So x equals positive and negative 5i. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any questions on that? Hey guys, as you get better, do you think you're going to have to do this stuff on the side here?
No.
No. Like, I'm doing it so we can all see where it comes from. But as you get better, you don't have to do that. Alright. We're going to try this one and then I'll let you do the other one on your own. X squared minus 12 equals negative 32. Bailey, what should be my first step in this problem? Plus 12. Perfect. X squared equals negative 20. Amber, what should I do next to solve for x? Square root it. Perfect. I square root both sides. I get x equals positive negative. I go to do square root of negative 20. Right, I break that up into 20 times negative 1, not times 7. Well, negative 1 is the same as I squared. Alright, square root of 20 is...
You can't reduce that square root.
It's not a nice number, right? Do we want to round our numbers?
No.
No, we've talked about this before, right? We do not want to round. So, if I have square root of 20, what do I have to do? We've done it before. We have. How'd you get that? What'd you do to 20? I like it. Yeah, you're right. What did we do to get there? We break it down by its perfect squares, right? So they are its factors. We're looking for the biggest perfect square that goes into 20. Very good. Well, the biggest perfect square that goes into 20 is 4. So I'm going to take the square root of 4. 4 times 5 will give me 20. And then square root of I squared, right? Remember when we did this? Right, we did simplified radical form. We talked about this. So square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 5 is not nice, so I'm going to leave it. And then square root of I squared is I. So we get positive and negative 2i square roots of 5. You could also write it as positive negative 2 square root of 5i. That would be acceptable as well. Just make sure that I does not sneak back under the radical. Cool? Alright, one more. I want you to try it. Okay, try the last one, please. Go ahead and do it. Good. What am I going to do this before I get x squared?
Equals, but I didn't finish it yet. Square root x squared is 5. Yeah, no, that's what I got.
Right, because if I multiply these two, it's going to be positive 5. And then, are we going to take this one? No, we're going to do this squared, right? Oh, we're going to do it.
You can move it. Fine.
You were really close.
Just don't finish that.
You did square root of 5, you should.
Just
I
do
squared
x
is
equals plus the negative.
What do you get? Square root of I squared. It doesn't sneak back underneath the radical. Okay? Did you get it?
Yeah.
As long as that doesn't sneak under the radical, you're good.
Could you just put it in front too, mister?
You could just put it in front. Alright, let's go through it quick. Excuse me. So, first thing we're going to do, subtract 22 on both sides. minus 22. 3x squared equals negative 15. Then I'm going to divide by 3. X squared equals negative 5. Well, x squared equals negative 5. Square root both sides. I get x equals positive negative. Remember, if I have square root of negative 5, I can break that down. Square root of 5 times negative 1, which negative 1 equals I squared. Is the square root of 5 a nice number?
No.
No, we already talked about that. We're going to leave it. What's the square root of I squared? I. Right? I squared equals negative 1,
Oh, yeah.
but the square root of I squared is I. So I get positive negative I times the square root of 5. Or you can put the I after it, as long as it doesn't sneak back under the radical.
Is it okay if I did 1i?
Yeah, if you put one I, that's fine. Any questions on what we did today, guys? Any questions on anything from the unit?
No.
Because that's our last new stuff. Tomorrow's going to be a what? Review day, which means Thursday is going to be a test. Make sure you are prepared. Coming in for extra help if you need it. Alright? Sweet, homework.